My name is Risa Simon, and I'm a preemptive transplant recipient, which means I was able to secure a transplant before I required dialysis, the optimum choice, the optimum option for those who are eligible for transplant, and that is to secure a transplant before they need dialysis. Unfortunately, less than 3% of those who receive transplants are receiving a transplant preemptively. In other words, the lion's share is struggling to survive on dialysis, and even those on dialysis that are waiting for a transplant from the deceased organ donor supply are waiting years, upwards of 9+ years in some regions. And of course, if you need a kidney today, this is not something you want to wait even months for, let alone years. So I was one of the lucky ones, but it didn't happen all that easily. I was not even aware of preemptive as being an option. All I was kind of hearing about was dialysis, and being that I had a genetic kidney disease, I was mostly experienced with a family member who lost the struggle to polycystic kidney disease in their early 40s. That was my father, and I knew that was not the path that I wanted to follow. So I took myself outside the sacred walls of my doctor's exam room, and I attended a patient conference. And lo and behold, I discovered the world of preemptive transplantation. And I was mesmerized with the information. I was listening to transplant surgeons and transplant nephrologists and recipients and living kidney donors. And I was recharged with enthusiasm as to what my future might be able to look like. And so I went back to my nephrologist, and I had a knee-to-knee conversation and said, hey, I'm just thrilled to learn about this. Of course, I was a little stunned that it hadn't been brought to my attention prior to attending that conference. But I knew something was missing, and so I'm so grateful that I did do this exploration process on my own. I just feel badly for all the patients that don't have a conference to go to, don't even know that there might be a conference out there. And aside from all that, aren't even aware of the benefits of transplant, let alone preemptive transplant, getting a transplant before they require dialysis. When I brought up the conversation, there was a lot of pushback. I was told I wasn't sick enough yet, in essence, and that I had plenty of time. And of course, if I had followed that advice, I would not be standing before you today sharing this story about being a preemptive transplant. I'm almost assured that I would have been on dialysis struggling. And of course, knowing now that the outcomes are so much better when there is no history of previous dialysis. So I'm so grateful for that. And I was able to find a living kidney donor, which is not an easy exercise or responsibility, to say the least. We not only get very little information on the best option, but there isn't any real mentoring or coaching, or a cheerleading team of perhaps peer mentors, patients that have already gone through the process, to say, you can do this. If I can do it, you can too. And this is what we need. This is what I have dedicated my life to now, as one of the lucky ones who had made it to the finish line of receiving and securing that transplant from a living kidney donor. By the way, this is not a ruby slipper type of thing. When I say it takes time, it takes a lot of time. It took me nearly 2 years, and I had 5 potential donors that were disqualified before I found my ideal donor, my ideal and perfect ideal donor, who was the sixth person to step forward for me. And so you could see that it could be very discouraging, and people can, kind of throw their arms up in the air and say, well, I tried. And no, I don't know that we ever can say we've done enough until we reach our goals, or we get to a point where we're no longer eligible. So I was willing to fight for my best life possible, and I achieved that. And I'm proud and delighted and mostly grateful that I was able to achieve that. And so now is my time to give back to those behind me. And of course, post-transplant challenges begin anew. So along with paying it forward, I jumped into a whole new bucket of challenges with immunosuppression, keeping myself out of harm's way, and trying to stay in the sweet spot of that trough level with my tacro, which I know you're all familiar with. And that has it's been and had been an ongoing challenge. I was on more of a generic program initially, and of course, we're on much higher doses post transplant. But once we got into the maintenance range, I know so it was just significant challenges trying to get into that ideal level that they were my transplant team was trying to keep me maintained in. And when I discovered that challenge, which was going on for months, I finally made an appointment to sit down knee to knee, eye to eye with my outside nephrologist as well as my transplant team, and said, let's talk options. And I don't know that they were used to having this conversation with the patient, but I'm curious, and I think that I'm willing to do the work, and I think we all should be willing to do the work if the outcome is well worth, that reward is well worth the time that we put into it. And so, again, a lot of pushback, but I said at that point I had discovered an extended release option, as many of you may know it by Astrograph XL, and I got pushback after pushback. No, oh, we don't have any patients on this medication. I just don't think this is a good idea. But after a number of conversations and presenting my case, I finally got the green light, and I was thrilled. And I, not too thrilled that I had to increase the dose to get into the sweet spot, but thrilled that I could take medication once in the morning and just be done with it. And it was a lovely courting experience with Astrograph for a bit, and then I was surprised once again. As I was going in every 3 months for my labs, and sure enough, my trough levels were all over the board, and they were not only getting wonky on me, but as I reduced my dose, my trough levels were increasing, and it was became quite alarming when I got into the 9, 10, 11, and 12 range when I was supposed to be closer to 5. And so, of course, I had made a commitment to my donor as well as my adopted kidney, that I was going to do everything within my power to keep that kidney safe and protected. And this was not the way to do it. So I had to go back, groveling back to my team and saying, well, maybe this wasn't such a great idea. And of course, I didn't do that until I had explored the world of Invarsys XR, because I needed to have a solution for my problem. So I presented my case once again, and I said, I know that you bent the rules for me, and I so appreciate that. And it was great for a while, but for whatever reason, it's not working now. And I'm really concerned. And I would really hope that you would consider allowing me to pioneer this process, because they were telling me, well, we don't have anybody at the transplant center who's on Invarsys, and so we feel a little uncomfortable doing that. But after talking to, I had developed a great relationship with the PharmD over at Mayo Clinic and in Phoenix, and I had great relationships with my physicians outside the transplant center as well, my nephrologist, and after several conversations, I got the green light again, and I was able to start Invarsys. And of course, one of the things I was most excited about, there's probably 3 things I could mention that I was most excited about with Invarsys, is the bioavailability being more effective, lower PK levels, and being able to start the medication on a lower dose because it was so bioavailable and those lower peak levels. And that was truly exciting. It was hard for me to believe. In fact, when I was recommended to start at a certain dose lower than what I was apprehensive. But sure enough, I can tell you today, I can attest that it wasn't 30% less as was guesstimated. I am on 50% less of the medication now that I'm on Invarsys. It's 50% less than what I was taking on Astrograph. And again, once daily being a dream come true. And ta-da, finally, my trough levels are consistent. I am maintaining that sweet spot. I had one hiccup on one of my lab tests, but it had to do with diet and just recognizing that the fat soluble medication is sensitive to high fat in the diet, particularly that first hour after taking the medication. So, or excuse me, second hour after taking the medication. So I'm learning, and these little pieces of the puzzle and the information that I've been receiving has been so very helpful, and it's allowed me to become more accountable as a patient and to live my best life ever. And I, of course, my goal has been to live the best and longest life possible. And so post-transplant, I see such a huge responsibility, and and making sure that all my fellow kidney patients, all those behind me, are given an opportunity to not only become more involved and engaged earlier on in their disease continuum. You know, CMS only allows and encourages nephrology practices to educate their patients in end stage diseases, stage 4 and stage 5, and that's just far too late. We need the prodding, we need the encouragement, we need little pieces of the puzzle, and then we need it to be repeated, and we need to have those difficult conversations so that by the time we are in need, we can pull the trigger, and instead of react, we could be far more proactive rather than reactive. And so that's my goal right now. And as community partners, I encourage you to help all kidney patients collaborate with their physicians, collaborate in these very important conversations, both before transplant and post-transplant, so that we know our options, so we can bring our voice to the table, and so that we can make smart choices, informed decisions, and smart choices that will allow us to live the longest and best life possible. You know, physicians are so wired to their Hippocratic oath to do no harm. And I believe as a collaborative force, we can encourage them to go beyond do no harm. I believe as a collaborative force, we all can do more good.